it. Liberal commentator Danielle McLaughlin and Republican strategist Gianno Caldwell join me now. Gianno,
thank you for having me. $1
trillion, really?
Yeah, it's a very big plan, but I think the way he pays for it is a couple different things here. He has said that he is going to close the very lucrative tax loopholes in which many people have been taking advantage of. In addition to that fact, he has also said that he wants to lower the tax rate for businesses. Some pay as high as 35% to about 15%, and also eliminate some of these billions of dollars in regulation. I think that that's important. I think the plan isn't perfect, and I must admit that. However, considering the fact that we have a Republican House and Senate, and Mr. Trump is not an ideologue, I think that he's going to be open to the ideas from Democrats and Republicans. And at the end of the day, this is only a framework. So we're going to be able to get something passed, and we're going to be able to get those more than 143,000 bridges repaired and about 25 million people back to work.
Just so everyone knows where I stand on this, every time President Obama brought up infrastructure spending, in almost every speech he gave about the economy in 8 years, I would lambast him about it, because that, in terms of, that's not the end-all be-all in job creation. And by the way, Danielle, there was a more than $300 billion infrastructure bill that was passed into law just at the end of last year. So in terms of what's the rush, other than a campaign promise, at spending more money on infrastructure?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Dagan, and that's exactly it. It's a campaign promise. The core of Trump's economic message was about jobs, about bringing jobs back. And so I don't see how he backs away with this from this. And I think he has a lot of problems because a Republican Congress, as you well know, they share your, I guess, disdain or abhorrence for large federal spending. So the question is, what is the plan? And I think Gianno touched on that. We don't really know what the plan is other than infrastructure.
And John, we know a little bit that they've thrown out the idea about public-private partnerships, where a private company comes in, gets tax breaks, and then takes, say, tolls that are collected on a road. But that doesn't really work for, say, infrastructure projects that don't produce any revenue. So that's so it's going to end up costing federal tax dollars that are borrowed potentially.
Yeah, but what has been said is this project, or the infrastructure bill, would be revenue neutral, meaning that we wouldn't really have to put that money up. And we're talking over the course of about 10 years. So at the end of the day, I think what's really important for people to keep in mind is it's only framework. This is a plan, but the thing is we have a separate but equal branches of government. We're going to have Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's office looking at that, the leadership looking at this very heavily, as well as those that chair the different transportation committees. So what we have is a willingness to do something to put folks back to work. And I think when you say infrastructure, why is that the first thing that most people look at? Because those are the easiest jobs to fill. Some people can get those skills relatively easily versus like a technology skill or something you have to go to school for.
And Danielle, President-elect Trump, he's a builder. That's his business, is real estate and building. So it would make sense in some way for him to focus on this as stimulus.
I think so. I think you're right, but he needs buy-in from both Republicans and Democrats. And I think Democrats are going to have a huge problem if this is just corporate welfare, if this is tax breaks to developers and builders, possibly for projects that are already underway. And as you say, the market likes some kinds of projects and it doesn't like other kinds of projects. But things like bridges and roads and tunnels, they're public goods. So whether they're revenue generative or not can make a big difference when the market's making the decision. We need government involved to make the decisions that are best for the people and not necessarily for
the difference with the government.
One thing that nobody, not a Democrat, not a Republican, will ever talk about is raising the gas tax, which hadn't gone up in more than 20 years. The federal gas tax.
Yeah, there was some Democrats on the Hill that recently were talking about that as an opportunity. I don't think that's something that the new incoming administration has an appetite for per se. However, I mean, we just got to keep this in mind. There's a lot of folks that have been out of the job market for a number of years. We haven't seen job growth this low, about that 2% under President Obama, since the 1970s. So when it comes to us creating jobs, we have to look at where we can better benefit the public. And I think someone mentioned the public good, and that's with the bridges and roads. And we got to keep that in mind, and we got to continue to keep an open mind to a new administration that may not have all the experts, but once they get on the ground, they'll have new information and they'll be able to make their plan as best as possible.
Gianna, thank you so much. You get the final word, Gianna Caldwell. And Danielle McLaughlin, always good to see you. I know Republicans wanting to spend $1 trillion on roads and bridges. Who would have thought it? But there you go.